Welcome. This is quite an auspicious day for me because this is the very center that some of my teachers used to sit and give Dhamma talks from this very podium. And so it humbles me as one of their students to be continuing in my small part in that same tradition. When the topic of security, seeking security, came up in relation to the Dhamma, I thought, what a wonderful theme in today's world, in today's very confused time period. As Brother Eric was mentioning, I work in the field of therapy. Before that, for over a decade, I used to be a high school and university professor, high school teacher and university professor. And I would see the need for human contact, for human healthy relationships. Healthy, emphasis on healthy. Technology is great, but it is a tool. Science is great, but it is a tool. And like any tool, it can have the potential for harm as it has the potential for benefit. When we are looking at the Dhamma, when we are looking at and trying to understand from the suttas, within the teachings of Lord Buddha, we see themes and issues that people dealt with on a daily basis that we encounter in our own lives 26 centuries later. Not much has changed. In my work as a Dhamma teacher back in Los Angeles, I try to help the audience members into coming to face the fact how the Buddha's words are very much relevant with our own lives and our thematic, whatever topics we might be engaged in and thinking, no, this only happens to me. In this context, even if you go and if you sit down in front of Lord Buddha right now, he would see and say, yeah, your situation is different. But they're not. See, the combination of the Four Noble Truths is so compellingly compact, loaded with powerful teachings, that when we look at the question of how am I going to find security in life? How? How about my relationship with my wife, with my husband, with my mother? How about my parents, my grandparents? How about my children? People come to us as teachers or as clinicians or therapists, making all kinds of, I wouldn't say excuses, but sharing their worries. If I only have this, that, and a little bit of that, my life will be perfect. I won't have to come and knock on your therapeutic door. Everything will be just dandy, perfect. Okay, let's say you find that wonderful mate that you always looked for. Perfect, there, next to you. You're married. In fact, it's so great that even your in-laws love each other. Your in-laws, your mother-in-law, your father-in-law love you Imagine that. And then, well, if I only can make enough money, if my business does well this year, if I only pay off my debts, if my children, I want to have a son, I want to have a daughter, I want them to be healthy. List after list after list after list, unending. Does it sound familiar? It's quite, I mean, we laugh about this because it relates with us and our own themes in life. It resonates with us because there's truth there. There is validity there. Okay, so what do we do about it? I remember when I was a child, I used to sit on my dad's lap, my father's lap, and I would look at his hand. They were so huge. They had veins and things. And I was a child, I was maybe 10 or 12, and I would look at him and I was like, wow, what a powerful man. I could never be like him. Never. I look at my hand now. In fact, my father, he passed away a few years ago, but before he passed away, I used to take special moments. I say special because the Dhamma allows us to treat each moment in a very special way if we are living with awareness, especially when our parents are still there and we appreciate their presence. So I used to put my hand next to his. And I would just like compare. I was like, do you remember? I would tell myself. Do you remember the differences? And now look at your hand. It's bigger than your dad's. You're taller than your dad. Okay. The Buddha gave us a word in his 3 declarations, the first of which is anicca, impermanence. It's not just impermanence. It's full of disappointment, the realization of impermanence. In fact, that's one of the key elements that unites anicca to dukkha, the second. You cannot have anicca without dukkha. And if anything is anicca, it cannot be atta. That's why the Buddha said it's anatta. Non-substantiality. It doesn't have a independent self nature to it. It is dependent on so many other factors. And if it is dependent on so many factors, then it means it cannot last. Just like my father. Just like many of our elders. I was a child, like all of you here, and I remember the different stages of life. Some time ago, in a Buddhist circle, I was giving a talk at a vihara, at a temple in Los Angeles, and they asked me to speak to a group of youngsters that came from Sri Lankan community. So it was a wonderful group of children, and one of them asked me, well, were you always a Buddhist? What brought you to Buddhism? I mean, weren't you born in a Christian family? So why? So I said, well, that's a very good question. I've had many incidents in my life where I was like, wait a minute, I don't agree with this, I don't agree with that, I don't agree with that. And years later when I come across Buddhism, it goes, aha, this is my path. But the very important thing that made me really come to appreciate the Dhamma was the fact that I had experienced suffering being born in Lebanon. I was personally injured, traumatized, where I was not going to make it. But I survived. But from that point on, it made me realize some harsh realities about life. That there was not one thing that I could put a cover on and say, nothing is going to touch that. It is safe. My parents are safe. They will never die. The love I have towards this or that person will never go away. The love that they have towards me will never go away. There's no such thing, as we all know. And that's what the Buddha was trying to indicate for us. Help us, show us. And that's why he gave us the Four Noble Truths. It's quite remarkable. Even at the time of the Buddha, people used to say, yeah, I get it. Four Noble Truths, fine. It's okay. I understand. There's suffering. I mean, tell me something I don't know. Well, one of the key reasons why the Buddha called it Arya Satya. Arya means noble. It's not that the dukkha is noble, it's the understanding of dukkha, the presence of dukkha. That is the qualifier of nobility. Now, okay, why is it noble then? The realization. Many people equate the Dhamma or Buddhism, the Buddhist path, as pessimistic, which is wrong. They say, well, your tradition, your religion always talks about pessimism. You always say, life is suffering. Hold on. That's misrepresentation of the Lord Buddha's teaching. What do you mean, they ask? I say, the Buddha didn't say that. He said, there is suffering in life. Huge difference. Instead of saying, life is suffering. There is suffering in life. Now, to come to a point where we understand the truth of that statement on a visceral level, deeply, essentially, and see how big of a part that is taking in our lives, then we start to say, wait a minute, maybe dukkha is also in other areas of my life. With my relationship with my boss, with my relationship with my teacher, with my spouse, with the government, with this, with that, you name it. There's millions and millions and millions of examples. Okay. But where is suffering coming from? The Buddha gave us the second noble truth. I'm hearing whispers, which is great. The cause of suffering. Yes, samudaya satya. Now, dukkha, samudaya satya. When you're talking about a cause, there's, in the West, people love to equate the Dhamma with science a lot. Fine, to some degree, it's okay, but science has a long way to go to catch up to the Dhamma. There's so much that science does not have the tools to measure what the Dhamma teaches, what the Dhamma practitioner experiences, what the mind's capabilities are, and the transformations that take place within an individual. So science is good to some degree. So in science, one of the laws of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Aha! If we go by that premise, then we see how there's got to be a cause if there's suffering. And the cause of that is the ignorance which brings about craving, holding on, latching on to my father or that image of his hand and not wanting that image to go away. When you hold on to your loved one or your child and not want them to get older, Or when you see that gray hair, if you have any hair left. It's like, no! No! Where did that come from? I've known people who would pluck the gray hair. Like, shh. I want to hide it. Okay. You're going to be wasting most of your time because there's not going to be any hair left because you're going to be pulling everything. When we look outside of the Dhamma for security, what we are doing is we're going back to the source of the second noble truth, meaning we're craving for things to stay the same way, especially, obviously, when it's something that we are gaining pleasure out of. I remember Bhante Punnaji used to constantly repeat to me, he says, life has become nothing more than a maximization of pleasurable experiences and minimization of unpleasant ones. When I first heard him say it, like, yeah, yes, but we do this all the time. All the time. So, when you look around you and you see individuals who have reached a pinnacle in life, meaning a certain status, perhaps they came from poverty, perhaps they came from illness. So there's nothing wrong, there's nothing in the Dhamma that says you should not have any pleasure, by the way. It's our attitude towards the experiencing of a pleasureful experience. Meaning, am I wanting to hold on to this simply because it looks just incredible? Who says that you cannot appreciate your loved one, your partner, your child, their youth as they grow up in front of your eyes, and the different experiences that you're witnessing them go through, and the changes that take place within you? See, the Buddha would always say, this whole entire path is in this fathom-long body. All the teachings, we were talking about it earlier, all of the 84,000 teachings is found here, in this body. One's own, your body. If we know how to look. If we know how to look. Because I taught science, because I have this application-based approach in whatever I do, especially when it comes to teaching of the Dhamma, I always try to give the listeners, or as a therapist, my own patients, a tool that they can use immediately. Not when they leave my office, for example, but even while they're there. What can I say that could help you overcome some of the difficulties that you face? Is there such a tool? And when you look at the Dhamma, it's all over the place, fortunately. I don't have to look far. So I will also give you, at this point, some of the things that you probably are familiar with, but I'm going to try to go deeper into some of the others and connect them with the theme of seeking security in the modern world that we live in. There's 3 trainings that we undergo in this path. Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. These are not things that we need to just memorize. These are practice-based protocols. We apply them in every way, every shape, and in every manner in our daily lives. Sila. When the Lord Buddha was teaching, not every individual who was present there was on the same level as everyone else. There were different levels of practitioners. There were some who would just come and sit in front of the Buddha, mesmerized, and they would just be, their jaws would drop, and they're just like, he was such a compelling presence. Their faith would be so great, that was enough for them. And it's no surprise that you see them actually fulfill some of their paramis. And when they died, they actually experienced being reborn in the Devaloka. Fine. Now I'm not saying I'm not a proponent of that path. Neither was the Lord Buddha. In fact, he would discourage. There's a case where he had to really scold, in a sense, a gentleman who had left his home, his family, and he had come and sat in front of the Buddha. Wherever the Buddha was teaching, he would just smile at the Buddha. So 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, the Buddha was seeing what was going on in his mind. And then he saw what was necessary, because that's another reason why the Buddha was the greatest mendicant man, a teacher, as well as a physician. So he would just give the right dosage, the right prescription medicine for that right time, for that right person. And the person was shocked enough, he was crushed emotionally. He felt rejected by the teacher that wanted him to leave his presence. But that was compelling enough for him to go and sit and meditate. Soon enough he became an arhat. Sila. We do not have to take the 8 or 10 or 227 precepts like a bhikkhu does in this tradition in order for us to practice Sila. When we take the first precept, for example, out of the 5, as laity, panatipata, vedamana, sikkhapadam, samadhiyam. I try often to dispel the myth that exists in the West when people hear precepts. They immediately equate that with commandments. Morality, oof, I don't want that. Authority figure giving me, pushing me down. You can't do this, you can't do that. If you do, some invisible man or something is going to come and crush you. So I have to dispel that myth by explaining to them that there is no such thing in the Dhamma, in this practice. In fact, you have to go and sit in front of the teacher and ask for the precepts to be given to you. You request them. And once the teacher has given it to you, you still have to practice it on a daily basis. It's a training. It's a training. Sikkhapada. It's a training. So when you train a certain muscle, sometimes you're able to hit the target, sometimes you're not. But you don't beat yourself up later on if you don't. It's okay. So what am I saying? Sometimes one of the hardest precepts is which one? Musavada. Yes. Musavada, remember there's different, it's not just musavada, speaking, excuse me, falsehood, it has several different aspects to it. Divisive speech, slandering, angry speech, idle chatter, speaking falsehood. Idle chatter is big. Right? People do it all the time. I'm not doing anything. I'm at a party, I'm talking with someone, so there's nothing to talk about. They're forcing me to speak. Okay. Soon enough you will find out that you have gone astray. And now you're talking about things that really don't have anything to do with the Dhamma. In fact, now you are beginning to break some of the precepts. So, what I advise my meditation students to do, something that my teachers have advised me years ago, the moment you realize that you have broken a precept, if there is a Buddha statue nearby, if there isn't, that's fine. Just visualize the presence of the Buddha and just retake the precept, and that's it. But honestly, genuinely, realize that what you have done is not something that you would have done under a state where you were aware. Because what that opens the door otherwise is remorse comes in, regret, which is a negative state, which is one of the hindrances, nivarana. Uddhacca, kukucca. Restlessness comes in, remorse and worry. They start churning up, and now the mind is no longer tranquil. So, we're still on Sila. A person can find refuge. This is, I was on the plane a few hours ago, so I was sitting down and I was pondering how to approach this very juicy, rich topic. And I said, of course. Sila is wonderful. Sila is very protective. Not just of you, but those other beings around you. See, if you take the precept not to steal, or not to commit sexual misconduct, let's say coveting someone else's spouse or partner, what you are essentially saying is, you no longer have to fear me. I'm safe. You're safe around me. In fact, one of the wonderful things that does take place when a person keeps the 5 precepts is other beings, namely animals, dogs, birds, other animals around you, are going to start to feel comfortable coming around next to you. I've seen quite interesting evidence and heard stories of people who, sitting there, all of a sudden, other people, in fact, come and huddle next to you. Suddenly they want to take a picture with you. Meanwhile, there's other people like you, but they're not going there. They're coming to you. So what essentially is happening is, you are directly and pragmatically applying something that bears fruit here and now. Here and now. Which is one of the qualifiers for the Dhamma. We talk about safety in a bank account. But the bank can be robbed. If nobody robs it, the government robs it. I don't know how it is here in Malaysia, but in America, it happens all the time. I know people who buy cars, homes, houses. A few $100,000 car parked on the street. I sometimes joke about it and I say, imagine you just put all that money in a briefcase, unlocked, and you put it on the street and you go to bed. Do you feel safe? It's like, that's not exactly how, and I said, that's how it is. We invest so much of our lives into things, into relationships. Now, remember, one of the first things I mentioned is the need for healthy relationships. We are social beings. Anthropologists will tell you this. Biologists will tell you this. Evolutionary psychologists will tell you this. Brain, neurofeedback, neurologists will tell you this. Because there's parts of the brain that really develop only when they are feeling the warmth, sustainable, comforting presence of someone that we feel connected with and towards, meaning social construct, allows parts of the brain to grow. And when you take those things away, the social well-being factor, when you take that away, part of the brain doesn't exist. It doesn't. See, the frontal part of the brain, it's called the PFC, or the prefrontal cortex. It's the latter part, the latest part of the human brain. It doesn't exist for many of us when we are growing, especially during teenage years. And I'm sure you have witnessed this a lot, where you don't understand why are you doing this? Similarly, parts of the brain that needs to be comforted in order for it to be settled require healthy relationship. Now, the most important relationship that you can always count on is the one you develop within yourself, towards yourself. Now, that doesn't mean you need to live in isolation. Even the Buddha used to send his monks, Mahakassapa, who was known to be the most ascetic of all of his monastics. The Buddha would instruct him, you need to go back to society. Give them an opportunity to gain merits. Give them an opportunity to grow, to be kind, to experience humanity, and to sublimate, grow by the experience. Sila allows us to do this in a very simple manner. As long as we're able to keep ourselves become mindful of the 5 precepts, even one of them. If someone, in Los Angeles it happens all the time, where we have this thing called road rage. We have freeways over there, and people are always on the edge of nervous breakdown, as if they're angry, very angry, even if they look calm. You put them in a car, send them off onto a freeway, good luck. Everybody's rushing. It only takes a little bit of a scratching of the surface and there it is. Dosa comes out, anger, hatred. What I advise people to do always is, anger is powerful. It's a powerful emotion. At least can you look at it? Can you observe it? Can you bring in awareness of, what's happening with my body? So this could be a tool that you can apply. When you get angry, different parts of your body start to cringe. It actually starts in the brain. There's tightness occurring in the brain, different parts of the regions of the brain. But that doesn't stay there. It actually manifests somatically within the body itself. So it took me years to realize that when I would get stressed, it happens in my jaw. But it took me years to, wait a minute, what's happening? What's happened before that? What happened before that? So you're developing this sense of curiosity. This path requires us to be curious. Curious of our lives, and the Buddha was the most curious person that I have come across in history. And that's, a curious mind can only come up with the Four Noble Truths, because that means you have sat down and you've thought about it, looked at it, asked questions. So Sila. And it gives you a comforting feeling when you go to bed at night. knowing that you didn't break any precepts. And if you broke them, fine, but you realized that you broke one or two. That's okay. Remember, we don't want remorse. And the next day, you're going to become more adept, more skilled at detecting. And then comes the second of the three trainings, which happens to be samadhi. Samadhi has it's one of the 7 factors of awakening. The Bojjhangas, I know Bhante Punnaji has given extensive talks on that. Without getting into too many details, samadhi is a collectedness of mind. It's a mind training. Allows a person who has moved up from Sila to the next level, where you're able to maintain the tranquility of mind in order for you to feel the collectedness of mind. You're able to observe yourself or your object of meditation in a calm state, and that becomes your security. If you notice, I talked about things that are impermanent initially when I started speaking. Now I'm talking about how the Dhamma can help us bring in a sense of security into our lives. Because I don't want you to leave tonight and think that, yeah, we can't do much about life. Life is always going to be pulling the rug from under our feet, so forget it. Anyhow, we're going to die at the end. That's not the message here. The message here is there is absolutely a strong sense of security that is each and every one of your lot. It's your right. If the tools are there, that's what I'm trying to do, to share them with you. Sila is also virtue, is also discipline. That discipline carries over into the mind aspect. You now become able to watch yourself when you are getting angry. The very fact that you're able to look, observe the experience means that you've actually separated yourself from identifying with it. See, so many people come to my office as a therapist and they say, I'm depressed. I'm sad. And it saddens me because I realize how many children today, are being given antidepressant drugs, medication, to control the depression. There's so many cases of suicide in the world. It doesn't have to be. People are taking the experience of sadness, of dukkha, let's say, and putting it in their hearts and looking at it and looking at the world and just identifying with it, basically the opposite of anatta, and saying, who am I to be able to control all of this? So might as well just implode on myself, crush. And especially when you're a youngster, you don't have that many answers to questions. So people are getting desperate. People are getting into addictions, all kinds of addictions. Today, kids are not even able to communicate with other kids. Why? Because you have a cell phone. Parents are not able to talk with their children. Parents are not able to talk with their own children. I mean, this is serious stuff. And we have to take account, make ourselves accountable to some of this as adults. So many people, so many adults have to work 1 or 2 jobs. Okay, when the mom or dad comes home, the child is annoying, they don't want to do their homework or something, and they are yelling or wanting this, mom, dad, whatever, and the parent says, okay, what do you want? A game, a toy, this, here it is, go. Just let me relax. That has an accumulative effect. That is ignorance. So there has to be some involvement. Now, if we do not practice even for 5 minutes, the Buddha says, even if you're able to remember to be mindful of one single breath going in and out, just one, and you are able to tranquilize and relax. Piti manasa kayam pasambati. When there is joy in the mind, the body follows suit and it becomes more relaxed. When you're opening your door of your house to get in, try to see if you can separate all of the difficulties that you face during the day, all the hardship, right before you walk in through the door and to face your family. Can you drop, like a heavy bag, all that stress outside and then walk? See, all of us have taken our shoes off before we walked in here. Okay, that's nice, but it's not as important, as more powerful as you doing what I just described. Unloading yourself, because you are unloading the shoes that have the toxins and the dirt that you have walked all over town with. Why? Because you want to keep the house clean, sanitary. So it's got a symbolic value there. But imagine the power when you walk into your home and you look at your loved ones' faces and they see you refreshed. That to me is 1,000,000 times better than just taking off your actual shoes. See, we have to ask questions of the customs that our parents have taught us. What is there? What is it trying to say? That curiosity. This path is about having a curious mind. We're never stagnant. We're never stuck in the path. You know, there's a saying from Greek literature and philosophy. There was a philosopher named Heraclitus. He has a famous saying, at least it's attributed to him, where it says something along the lines of you never same twice, yes. You never step into the same stream or river twice. Well, when we look at it from the Dhamma standpoint, a Buddhist would say the same person can never step into the same river twice. That takes it to another level. So every moment, what that means is, every moment we have the possibility, the freshness, the newness to experience and to share it with the world around us. Now, the mind is always giving us these clues. When you are calming the mind, when you're tranquilizing the mind, that's one of the messages of the Satipatthana. I once was teaching a class in college, and there was a woman who, a wonderful woman, she was a single mother. She has a son who's autistic. She was not getting the support from the government to take care of him. She was working at a job where her boss, her supervisor, was making it a hellish experience every single day, and the boss wanted her fired. And she was a good student, she was a good person. I had seen the child. She brought him one time to the class. And I told her, I asked her one thing. She would come to class and she would be in tears sometimes. She couldn't concentrate. So I said, okay, forget about the lesson. I need you to get a piece of paper. Actually, I'm giving you a single sheet of paper. and I gave her a pen. And I said, I want you to write down 100 things that you're grateful for. She's like, are you kidding me? I said, yes. I'm not kidding you, but I want you to write. She starts writing eventually, and all of a sudden, there's a lot of things that she's grateful for. Then I wanted to make my point. I said, what is the most important thing in your life? Immediately she said, my son. I said, no. She's like, are you kidding me? I said, no, I'm not. She's like, what are you saying? You know me. Like, what are you trying to say? There's something more important than my son? This is my life. And I said, there's something even more important. And she's like, she got angry at this point. And I said, what? And I said, if you have a screwed up mind, if your mind is all over the place, if you're angry, if you're drugged, if you're drunk, would you even be able to hold your son with love? She's like, no. I said, the most important thing in your life is tranquility of your mind. And this is a person who doesn't know anything about meditation. See, you don't have to practice meditation necessarily to understand the jewels and the benefits of the Dhamma. Hopefully you will be enticed into wanting to practice by seeing the benefits of it. So tranquility of mind, if from samadhi you only get that, that's plenty. That's a lot. Next time when your spouse makes you angry, check. You know, I always tell people, when you point the finger out towards someone, it's you. It's you. It's your fault. If you weren't like this, I wouldn't be this way. Okay, there's one finger pointing that way. How many fingers are pointing this way? 3. So always think about, it's never about the world outside. Now I'm not saying the world is not carrying all these factors that cause harm and many devastating things sometimes. Yes. But what we need to do is to look at how much craving am I putting into this? Craving in the sense that I don't want to experience this, put this away from me. That's dukkha. The desire to want to have something when you can't, the desire to get rid of something that you don't want is dukkha. That's craving. The second noble truth. But the Buddha did not stop there. The Buddha said there's a third noble truth, which is the cessation. There's the nirodha. There's the ending of suffering. And that separates the Dhamma, the Buddha's teaching, from everything else. This is where it is testing its validity. Because the moment you actually practice one single breath of tranquility of mind, just one, when you lift and you throw away your burden of the day before you walk into your home to kiss your children, for example, there's a sense of relief that comes in. That is small nibbana. That is a small nirodha. Try it. You know, one of the epithets, one of the crucial descriptors of the Dhamma is ehipassiko. Come and test it yourself. So the Buddha gave us those many opportunities to test his teachings. Never to believe any of it. Never. And then you get to the third of the training, Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, wisdom, or discernment. What that is the third level of the training. And that means that you're able to see, okay, if this person is treating me badly, if he's saying or she's saying this thing just to make me angry, What did I do last time when they did that? I observed my body and I realized that I'm tightening up some muscles. I relax. Why? Because my gaze is now turned on me instead of making a story about the other person. Your life is none of anyone's business. Let me just say that again. Your life is your life. It's nobody else's business. The only inheritance you have, according to Lord Buddha, is your own karma. That's it. That's the only thing we're going to take with us. Only. You might be the next Bill Gates, or I think the new one is Jeff Bezos, Amazon CEO. Where is he going to put all that money? In a casket? In a nice suit made of gold and diamonds? No. It's the greed that we will take with us. The anusayas, the latent tendencies, the driving force. It's like the arrow that you pull. At the moment of death, it's like letting go of that arrow. That energy is the thing that makes us take on another form given the right circumstances. We take on a birth. Because that energy, remember, cannot be destroyed nor created. The energy has been left. The momentum is there. It's like a boulder that you push down from a steep hill. You're not going to go and say, okay, stop, boulder. No, it's going to take it with you. So panya is wisdom that allows us to put two and two together and see, aha. But imagine if you have Sila, then you're not saying those negative words to begin with. You're not breaking the precept. Okay? And that gives you the platform for you to become more tranquil. When you become tranquil, that opens doors for insight. See, there is a science in the teachings of the Buddha. Step-by-step process. That's why he had so many arahants. But as we were talking about earlier, even more than the arahants were the number of the upasakas and upasikas who had attained first stage, second and third stage awakening. See, as a Dhamma teacher, Theravada Dhamma teacher, I sometimes have to remind people, even Dhamma teachers themselves, and even monastics in some cases, that the teaching of the Buddha is alive and well, and it can produce today Sotapannas, Sakadagamins, Anagamins, and Arahants. Before he closed his eyes for the last time, Lord Buddha was asked about the future of the sasana, and he says, so long as there is still the Eightfold Path available, so long as there are teachers who are teaching the Eightfold Path properly, and so long as there are those who practice the Eightfold Path properly, the world will never be short of arahants. I don't know about you, but I hear about the Eightfold Path. I have students who have advanced quite well. I personally have seen Sakadagamis. I have personally seen Sotapannas. In this body, I have seen. And I have seen the transformation that takes place. This path is most wondrous path. So I don't want you to be disheartened or lose faith in the practice of the Dhamma. I don't want you to think of the Dhamma be something in the suttas or stories or the nikayas that you have to read or you have to become a monk or an expert. in order for you to attain any of these stages. Of course, being a monk or a nun is a wonderful thing because already your merits become exceedingly increased. Your practice develops a lot faster. But as long as most of us here are laity, I want to encourage you that the biggest number of enlightened beings at the time of the Buddha, when he was sitting down with his congregation, were laity. Anathapindika was a laity, member of the laity. Chitta, who was an anagami, who had businesses, wealthy man, he was a practitioner. So that gives me hope. That, not the stories, don't get me wrong. The stories are wonderful because they can inspire us. But are there ways where you can live a life that can be inspiring to you first? Can you develop a lifestyle where personality change takes place? When you look at yourself in the mirror and you don't recognize yourself from 10 months ago, and you say, I used to like this, I used to like that, and I used to love that, but now they've lost their sense. For me, I like to practice more. You know, sometimes culturally, some of us might want to get really old in our 70s or 80s or 90s in order for us to practice. That's still good. But if we have the opportunity to practice now, when we have a lot more energy, why not? So, you have the three, but Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, then it can actually become a deeper sense of security where a person can actually experience any of these four stages. That is unshakable. The Nibbanic experience is akuppa ceto vimutti, unshakable serenity of mind. That means the tranquility of mind is so powerful, it's so heavy, it's so steady, nothing can shake it. Now, because many of us are not there yet, we can start with Sila. You can do this every day. But I want to give you guys opportunities and for me to also hear from you questions, comments, critiques, elaborations. So please, I like it to be more interactive instead of just being one-sided, you know. So, is there a format, Brother Eric, for you to?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, brothers and sisters, any questions? All questions are welcome.
Yes.
I would like to actually say, you mentioned about fault finding. One finger points
Yes.
the other way, 3 points back at you. Hey, we have 5 fingers. Where's the other finger?
The reason why I said that is, you know, we use conventionalities, conventions, symbols, just like I use the example of dropping your shoes outside, using that as a symbol for something a lot more deeper. So, yes. So this is just a convention I use. This is something I actually have heard from a teacher, a colleague of mine back when I used to be a high school teacher. And she used to mention that to the students because the students were teenagers. So they used to say, oh, I didn't do it, he did it. So the teacher was using that. So I don't dwell on where the other fingers are, I don't care. I try to get the message out of it.
The tongue is the middle part.
The middle
It's an
path.
option which has a different direction.
Interesting. Yeah. I didn't think of that. Thank you. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
A few questions.
Please.
Actually, we are social creatures. Right? There's one precept, the Musa Vada. Yeah, agree that it's a bit of a difficult one. Because as social creatures and we have to live in this community,
Yes.
we do talk to people. And sometimes it does swerve. I mean, I don't always talk to Dhamma with a lot of people. I don't talk Dhamma all the time.
Yes.
In fact, to be completely honest, in my Facebook, sometimes I try not to talk too much about Buddhism because it will turn off certain segment of people in my group of friends. So then I need to like still engage with them because they're all my networks. So I post stuff that could still interest them. Is that considered idle chat? Because I have also thought about it, like, I have remorse, every time I post, do I continue to engage with them, there is remorse. I say, shit, I'm still like, I'm not following properly. And then I was thinking of shutting down my Facebook, but I have almost 900 contacts there. So it's not easy for me to just shut up everybody. And that's my way of getting to know things also, because everyone posts stuff. But I feel like I still, like not following the path in the Sila side, because there's this part about social media, and what we post, and I can't be posting Dhamma because I'm not a monk and I'm not a Dhamma preacher or whatever. I'm a lay person that engage with people from across all religions, and I have a lot of friends from other religions. I don't want to turn them off. So how do I manage this?
What is it doing to you? The desire.
I can't go to my office and talk about Dhamma all the time. I have to talk and engage with them on a lot of other topics. Am I erring? Am I following my precept? I know it's not about enforcing it on yourself, but I want to follow the path properly and still living with the society and not being looked on a bit differently, because you have to understand a lot of people are not Buddhists. And when we keep talking about Dhamma, to some segment they look at you wrong. There are people like that also. They think that you're becoming fanatical. There are people like that. So how do I behave normally in the society and following the Sila?
A very good question, and I appreciate you bringing into the discussion some very real aspects of normal life. Again, I will put the spotlight on the person, in this case you and your well-being. Now, just to clarify, the way I see it, when we are talking about sharing the Dhamma, this is a place where we can talk about the Dhamma openly. Now, I can only talk about my experience. None of the individuals that I work with are Buddhists. None of the patients I see are Buddhists. None of the language I use is necessarily Buddhist either.
Maybe the approach.
Now, of course I'm doing a lot of calibration in my mind because it is a sensitive area where I work, so I have to represent the agency where I work as a therapist, for example. But my objective is pure and simple, to help ease the suffering of the individual that I have been entrusted to take care of as a healthcare professional. So far, so good? Now, I didn't say anything about Buddhism, did I? I'm carrying the message of the Dhamma in everything I'm doing with them. I might even use terms like cognitive behavioral psychology. I might use interventions, that's the language that we use in therapy, in psychotherapy, but using a Buddhist filter to make it go through. Sometimes I talk with couples that are dealing with issues while using the Four Noble Truths. They don't know. They don't know. And in fact, they don't even care probably. What really matters is, where am I in my mind? Because I used to have the same turmoil in my mind. am I being a good practitioner? Am I being a good Buddhist? I should take the mic and go everywhere and preach the Dhamma. No. One of my teachers, he used to say, after a retreat, people would come and tell him, Bhante, do you think I'm advancing in my practice? Do you think I'm doing good? Do you think I'm moving along? I'm learning? And he would say to them, why are you asking me? I only see you for 2 weeks, 1 month. Go talk to your wife. Go talk to your cat, your dog. They will tell you if you've really improved, that you've become a good Buddhist or not. See, what I'm trying to say is, your objective is, first of all, to keep that tranquility of mind, clear conscious. That's another way of saying it, even though I'm using it with, very broadly. But I would invite you to question even your desire to keep things okay. I want everybody to be okay with me. How important is that to yourself? I'm just leaving you with those questions. And how compelling is that, or are those, for your own happiness? Is it very important? And another good question to ask, and I invite all of us to do it, and some phones have this, for you to be kind of reminded of how often, how many hours a week or a day you spend on social media. And that is even more of a compelling way of using idle chatter. Because idle chatter is another way of saying wasting of time. And if you look at how much we use social media, wow, hours go by. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 20 minutes here. Oh, look at this little cat on the thing. Why? Now I'm seeing Buddhist monastics posing with cats and dogs. I am seeing Buddhist teachers posting videos, and their website is supposed to be on the Dhamma. I personally might have issues with that, but they don't, and that's fine. Yes?
That's a very good answer.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you agree.
I just like to reiterate on the question which you asked. Are you looking at things in a judgmental point of view, Sister Carol, where you feel your conceit, your ego, and your personality perspective takes a very, very heavy burden on your decision making?
I feel like the more I practice the precepts, the more aware. Before that, I wasn't aware, right? So I was just doing things mindlessly. But now I'm aware, and I'm very, it becomes like that. You can see the way I'm judging myself.
Sometimes
I'm judging myself. I am judging myself.
That's
but then I realized, I'm tensing up.
Talking about the precepts, yeah? Can you actually kind of like play a curious role to understand when did these precepts actually come into the sasana? When did the Buddha actually give these precepts or incorporate precepts into the teaching? That's the first question. Second question, you did mention a character called Chitta, a laity. If I recall well, he had 4 wives. Now, how does that relate to the third precept?
Yes. First question, it had to do with the precepts. Well, I'm glad to say that for almost 2 decades, this is what my teachers have taught me. They're all monks, Theravada monks. I was surprised when I heard this, by the way. They said for the longest time, there was no precepts. And if you look at the Vinaya Pitaka, you actually read about each of the precepts and the background stories and how they started. Because initially, all those individuals who became bhikkhus, bhikkhus at the time, they were already so established in the path. There was no question of breaking a precept. None. It was all a given. It's like gravity for them. It's like, of course I'm not going to harm another person, another being. Of course I'm not going to have sex. Of course I'm not going to steal. Of course. It's not even a question to ask. However, as the Buddha Sasana, as the monastics, as the popularity of the Dhamma expanded, more and more people saw, this is good. I can leave home, I can become a bhikkhu, I can take the ordination and then a higher ordination, and food is there, monastery is there, this and that. There were many people like this. They were not the majority, however, in order for the Buddha to make sure that for the posterity of the Dhamma to be maintained healthy and strong so that it could reach us 26 centuries later, he had to establish one after another precepts. He didn't want to, but he wanted to preserve the Dhamma. He wanted to preserve the Sangha. And that is a special quality. And that's what I have to remind people of, the importance of Sila. It's not somebody over there on top of us enforcing it. No, there's a reason. It purifies, it protects, but there was an important reason to begin with. Yes, and that's why the number came up to 227 for a bhikkhu. Later on, when the bhikkhuni order came in and the Buddha hesitatingly agreed, he had to add more precepts for the female monastics simply because of the time period and the various different considerations for women, because they were going to now walk around the countryside. And India of that day, even today, is not a very safe place for a female. So the Buddha had to ensure. You can think of, like, I'm blown away sometimes with the intellectual capacity and the considerations from 26 centuries ago of a human being who came up with all of these scientific, I would say, at this point, step-by-step processes. And the second question, if that pleases everyone with the first answer, is about Chitta. Now, Chitta, when he was married 4 times, I think that number is correct, if I'm not mistaken. However, in those days, if you were wealthy, Chitta, by the way, he was such a wealthy businessman, sometimes even kings used to go borrow money from him for campaigns. And he was highly, highly developed intellectually, and later on, when he became an anagami. Now, as an anagami, you don't have the 5 fetters. Some yojanas, they drop. The last 2 of the 5 happen to be lust, or kamachanda, or sensual lust, things that have to do with the 6 senses. And you also have to drop anger, hatred, vyapada. So that completely vanishes. In addition to the other 3, which is sakkaya ditthi, silabbata paramasa, and vicikiccha. Very good. Which is the doubt in the Dhamma and the effectiveness of it. So the first 3 get to be fully dropped in the first, the Sotapanna, and in the second, Sakadagami, actually weakens the last 3 drop, and the 2 get weaker. Now, in the case of Chitta, he was no longer having any sexual intercourse. He was already old, and he was a grandfather, but they lived in his mansion as sisters. And one of the things that happens to an anagami is one of the first things they do is they want to separate themselves from their spouses or their partners, and they usually give them the right, the choice to leave, and in some cases they've even gone to someone and said, did you want to marry someone else? And one of them said yes, and this person goes and gives his blessing to the new husband. So there is no lust. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
But it's again the third precept of having chastity towards a partner. There's an anomaly there.
Yeah, it's sexual, even like there is, viraga takes place, which is dispassion. There's disenchantment. So even food, when you eat food, you don't lust after another spoonful. If someone says, oh, you have to have this mango lassi, it's like, oh, this is something from a deva realm or something, isn't it? And you're like, okay. You realize there is some pleasure, you taste it, but and you're thinking about what nutritious factors are being added. I saw some hands there, so earlier. I don't want to call anyone, but out. Yes, please.
My voice is a bit bad, but I see what you've been talking about, how we should teaching going to adapt to a free world. There's so many programs. The program might be offended by what you say.
The program might be offended by what I say.
Yeah. For example, a certain religion, when they look at Buddha, they consider Buddha should not be accepted by them. Right? And your comment on that to them is insult to them. So they will be very upset with you.
What part of what I said would be upsetting to them? I didn't understand.
Just for example, Judaism, right? The Jews, they claim from their scripture they are the chosen one. And then you go and say no, they are not, so we don't listen to them, you'll be very upset.
I see what you're saying. One of the, well, actually there's been several instances in the Buddha's lifetime. In one of the suttas, a wonderful sutta, heavy, it's loaded with information and meaning, is the Madhupindika Sutta, the Honey Bowl Sutta, where Sakyan, royal family member, Sakyan, where the Buddha actually belonged to that clan as well. His name was Dandapani. He had a golden cane, and he used to walk with that golden cane. And he was a very close friend of Devadatta, the Buddha's brother-in-law or cousin. So he came to the Buddha and he said, so, he was very disrespectful. So what does the recluse Gautama teach? So the Buddha gives, pretty much in a nutshell, the entire teaching in a big paragraph. So you have to take a few breaths for you to say the entire paragraph. I mean, that's how long it is. But one sentence in that is addressing what you said. He said, this path, in his case, he's representing himself, Buddha, he says, there is no going after anyone. I don't find, you're not fault-finding. You're not in a mission to say to this religious practitioner, to that religious practitioner, you are wrong, I am right. Whatever their belief is for their path, my job is not to go and do this. Remember? Because just like that old saying, a man in the old days walked outside barefooted, and the ground was so jaggedy, rocks, shards of glass and this and that, and he didn't like it. So he goes home and he cuts some rubber, leather, And he looks in his pockets and he has some money. He goes and buys more leather and he covers up the front yard. And he goes outside and adds some on the street. And he walks and he says, now I can walk. Until a wise person goes next to him and says, what are you doing? He says, I want to now cover the whole entire world because I want to make myself comfortable. That's the trick. And the man says, what are you doing? You're insane. Give me a knife. He cuts him a little bit. He gives, give me your feet. Ties him up and gives him shoes. And he says, now walk anywhere you want. The Dhamma is giving us, through the Eightfold Path, remember, right communication or harmonious speech is not just when I'm communicating with you, but the first thing happens is my communication with myself, my internal narrative, my internal communication. Most of the times when we talk with ourselves, we are full of hatred, judgment. I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm never going to be a good dad. I'm never going to be a good son. I'm never going to be. This path is self-sustaining. The tranquility of mind that I mentioned earlier is one that gives you a sense of security that no convincing of somebody belonging to another tradition where they become part of what your belief is really could give that same satisfaction. Anyhow, the Dhamma is never about converting anyone. This is something I was saying about 2 weeks ago to someone in Los Angeles. I said, nowhere in the Sutta Pitaka do you find the Buddha ever mentioning, I want you to come to my path. No. Now, there were a lot of crazy people. Even the first individual who saw the Buddha when he had just attained awakening, look at how great of an opportunity it is. I mean, this man must have earned a lot of merits to be the first person to see after the Buddha's, Nibbana. And he looks at him and he's like, so, what are you? Are you a god? Are you a human? At that point the Buddha says, I am a Buddha. And the man rolls his eyes and just says, and he turns his back and walks. Now the Buddha didn't go and pull him back and say, hey, believe me, you know who I am? I am this. You know how many Mahakalpas it takes? For me? Do you know what great No! He just let him be. And that's another form of compassion. Nowhere do we find that. And that gives me such tremendous comfort. I see the individuals you're talking about around me. And that's one of the reasons why I'm coming back to your question earlier. It's not my job to show my Buddhist badges to them. If I am a good enough Buddhist, even that term, Buddhist, if I am on the path, if I'm practicing the path, then everything about me will indicate that. Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, we become the embodiments of that. And at the very least, if you could just become a Sotapanna, that would be wonderful. Sukhiyot. Yes, you had
I just want to add a small comment to
Please.
what you just said. Actually, we are looking at Buddhism and then we are comparing it with other religions. That's the start of dukkha. Because whenever we look at it in terms of religion, it disunites. It's actually creating more conflicts. But in the Dhamma, there's more spirituality and it's more universal. In fact, the whole teaching of the Buddha was universal in terms of sabbe satta, bhavantu sukhitata. But very few people can see it because there's too much conceptual commentaries and too much stories in terms of taking you to believe rather than understand. So we are caught in this confusion, and that is actually what we need to overcome.
Yes, and the best way to overcome that is not, I see this all the time in conferences, everybody, you have different traditions, different branches of Buddhism and this and that. Yes, it's good, it's good for numbers, for other people, other religions. Ultimately, what does it matter? Who cares? Really? If you're suffering at that moment because of your craving, if I'm suffering because of me wanting something to be different than what it is, I am suffering. I am suffering. So my first mission is to use the teaching to make myself not suffer. So, in essence, the path, I say this sometimes, some students might hate me saying this, but this is a fact. This is a lonely path. When I say lonely, I mean it's a singular path. I've studied Christianity. I was studying Judaism. I was in a monastery when I was 15 years old. Christian monastery I had gone to. So I grew up in that world of conversion. But I never was fulfilled because I was still in pain. Because ultimately, earlier we were talking about us humans being social organisms. The acceptability factor is so huge. I want you to look like me. That makes me feel good. That goes everywhere. If somebody is driving a fancy car, everybody wants to drive that car. Why? Because it's a status. And if you have the same thing, you will be now accepted. Which is another form of seeking security, by the way. Which is again false security. Now, we come a full circle. Let's seek the true, genuine form of security, which is found in the Dhamma, nowhere else. Even love. People read poetry, write poetry on love. Okay. The day will come where one of you guaranteed is going to die before the other. Guaranteed. Maybe if you're lucky, both of you will go at the same time. But that will end. People don't understand. Well, I'm going to love you forever. There's no forever. The Buddha made it very clear. Even the most highest devas, Mahabrahmas, the day will come, their credit will run out, and they will fall, as if on a ladder. Dum, 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 dum. We've been Mahabrahmas many times. We've been devas. We've lived in hells for eons. The probabilities are staggering. What does it say about us right now, experiencing life? Let's not be confused, let's not be dissuaded by other things that take away our awareness from where it needs to be, which is, how can I improve the quality of my life through the practice? The teachings. The teachings are not there to collect dust, nor for comparison, nor analysis. Analysis is just a waste of time. Now, of course, you need to use Chintamaya Panya. Remember, there's three kinds of Panya. Suttamaya Panya, which is through reading suttas, being inspired. Chintamaya Panya, which is when you think, absorb, process, And then there's the bhavanamaya, which is what you gain through the insight of practicing meditation when you're putting it all the layers of the cake together. So that gives you fulfillment and understanding. See, when you become a physician or a medical or even a PhD, you're still counting on your kindergarten education somewhere, as well as your secondary, as well as your college and university. They all have their own importance. But what do you do with them? That's what the Buddha left us with, a challenge. Jayata, nupamadata, nupachavippatisari no ahuvata. You have to practice. You, nobody else, need to practice the path, lest death comes and knocks on your door. And it will on every one of us. So life is very short. My life has taught me that. I never take my life for granted, even a single day. I don't know if I'm going to live to 50 or 60 or 70 or tomorrow. I can't take it for granted. Yes?
Yeah, thank you very much for your speech. Enjoy that.
I'm glad.
First of all, I'm Catholic,
Uh-huh.
and you have not said anything offensive. Thank you very much. And I've been here to Wakefield. I just came back from Himalaya with the Tibetans.
Wow,
I've
wonderful.
been to Sri Lanka for 5-6 times. And so far nobody tried to convince me to become a Buddhist. So I just try to reinforce it. But my Christian friends have asked, why is my Buddhist wife not converted yet?
You have asked that.
My Christian friends. I said,
Oh.
how come your wife is not baptized yet?
Interesting. Interesting, isn't it?
Second thing is, I'm not Malaysian, I'm Filipino. And I met my Malaysian wife in MIT.
Oh, wow.
And I work in Wall Street. And I've done a few businesses which are successful. So my question is there something wrong with me not to be suffering? You keep talking about suffering.
Mhm.
My children went to Harvard, went to MIT. My businesses are doing well. So I'm not suffering. Is there something wrong with me?
Thank you for sharing all of those wonderful gems. Have any of your children, how many do you have?
4.
Four.
4 with masters, Harvard, MIT, Stanford.
I didn't ask for their boy or girl?
One boy, 3 girls.
What's the girls?
Sorry. So the kid is upstairs. He's the mother, not me.
Oh, okay. So what are the girls' names?
Huh?
Girls' names?
But I'm the mother.
What are the names?
Our daughters are Janice, Elaine, and Lisa.
And the son?
Terrence.
Terrence. If Terrence calls you up and says, Dad, do you have any grandchildren?
5 boys.
5 boys. Terrence has any children?
4 boys.
4 boys. If Terrence calls you up tonight and says, Dad,
I see him every day. I just saw him.
oh, you just saw him. Well, he comes knocking on your door tonight and says, Dad, something horrible happened. What happens? Do you feel anything?
No, I just had my head surgery.
Uh-huh.
So nothing happened. Everything went well. Surgery went well. Recovery went well. The doctor was great.
I appreciate your rose-colored glasses. However, it comes back to our standards. Like earlier we were talking about Facebook, the standards of what is fulfilling to us.
Sorry, I don't do Facebook. I don't do Twitter.
I'm not talking about that. I'm just drawing on similarities. In your case, it was Harvard, Stanford, this and that. What if they didn't get into any one of those?
Okay, no choice.
They didn't have any choice.
Yeah.
Why not?
Because when they were 9 years old, I already told them what school to go.
What if they said, hell no, I'm not going to go?
Can I ask him a question?
Well,
just a simple one.
Okay.
Have you ever met any death in your family? Has your father passed away?
Yes.
Yeah. How did you feel?
How do you feel? Sad when he passed away, but he was happy.
Dukkha.
When we say suffering, that's, by the way, it's a very poor English translation of dukkha. Oftentimes I like to keep dukkha as just dukkha because there is not an appropriate, fully encapsulating English term for it. Some people have termed it as dissatisfaction, unsatisfactoriness. Some even called it stress. None of it do the job, or does the job. And the very simple question that this gentleman asked is very poignant. There's death in every family. Now, you can be in the celebratory mode still. I mean, come on. They've gone to all the universities that you wanted. You've gone to the university that you wanted. You married the woman that you wanted. Da, 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 da. So, sometimes, because of so many good merits, I would say, based on Buddhist teachings, we get a lot of the good stuff that we always wanted. However, that is just, in America we call it, that's the honeymoon phase. Death is the great equalizer. It doesn't care who you are, it doesn't care where your sons or daughters are graduated from. I see people coming in much younger than, I'm presuming, your children, in their age of 16 or 17. No, I'm using my example, where they have terminal cancer. That means they have about 6-7 months tops to live. They have to go and get chemotherapy at that age. So in your case, you have not encountered that, from what I'm hearing, with your family. That does not behoove you to sit there and say, dukkha doesn't relate to me, because your face changed when he asked you, did your father die? Your face, literally, your corners of your lips dropped.
I don't consider death as suffering.
No, it's what impact it does have on the rest of us. The ones who have had a connection with, a meaningful relationship with the people. That is suffering. So, one time the Buddha was asked about loved ones. And the person who was asking him expected the Buddha to say, they're the reason for being, type of a thing. And he said, your loved ones are the cause of suffering. And he couldn't believe it. This man left the Buddha and went to somebody else and says, could you believe this Gautama guy? He's saying, he's actually preaching that your loved ones can be cause of dukkha. And they were surprised. No, really? So this spreads all around the kingdom, and it goes even to the king. I think it was King Pasenadi. And the king, in the morning, sitting down with Queen Malika, and he's talking to her, and he's like, do you believe this? And Queen Malika used to go and listen to the Lord Buddha teach. And he says, do you know that your teacher is saying that loved ones are the cause of suffering? And Queen Malika says, well, are you sure it's Lord Buddha? And he says, yes, that's what and she says, well, if he's saying this, if these words came out of his mouth, then they have to be true. So, the king goes to Lord Buddha and says, what are you trying to say? And the king says, the Lord Buddha says to him, do you have so-and-so? Your children, this and that? And if one of them falls from a horse, I'm paraphrasing here, and he breaks his leg, and already his face cringes, the king's. No, don't say that. It's my son. He's the next thing, he's the crown prince. He says, what was that? What did that feeling, what was that? He says, that hurt. Even that possibility. That's dukkha, he says. The people who are closest to us are the doorways for more dukkha. That's what the Buddha was trying to say. So if I am in love with this partner and she gets cancer, that's not going to hurt me. I will know dukkha firsthand. That's what it is trying to say. So it takes wisdom for us to come to the understanding that there is dukkha in life, wherever you turn. So when we are not being encountered by dukkha, that does not mean that there is no dukkha. It's just that it hasn't, the thorn of dukkha has not gone deep enough for us to sense it yet. Sometimes we have calluses in our feet when we walk. And sometimes even sharp rocks, doesn't hurt. Until really sharp nail goes through, that you will feel. So that's the kind of pain that for some people it takes that. But before I come to you, I think this gentleman had a hand up.
Can I just share with you? I attended, since a Roman Catholic, right? A friend who's a Roman Catholic, he passed away. So we go to his funeral, and surprisingly, nobody is sad. They're celebrating with music, dancing, and all that. And they say, hey, he's going to heaven, go and play music in Kuala Lumpur. Yeah, I don't see any dukkha. They're so happy. Yeah. I look at him, where's and celebrate, have good drink, have good food, and then playing band,
Yes.
rocks and roll.
Again, the topic of today is on finding security through the Dhamma. So it's easy, especially because I see Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, being so is rampant with so flourishing with so many different religious groups, which is wonderful. And there's respect, I see also. So that gives me a comfort to know. And especially here that there's different religious represented, which is great.
Sorry.
Yes.
I didn't have a choice.
You didn't have a choice?
Buddhist wife asked me to do
The one who's resisting conversion.
Dukkha itself. The one is dukkha itself.
Yes.
That is dukkha.
Yes.
I'd like to make a comment on precepts.
Yes.
The way the question and answer was dealt with is related more to the formalization of precepts. Because in a lot of his teachings, Buddha mentioned the first 4 acts as being karmically unprofitable, that will lead to woeful plagues. He talked about that without it being framed in the formal form of precepts. He just said that if you want to be in a good, let's say for example, rebirth, or in a good situation in the future, you must refrain from these 4 acts. And these are the first 4 of the precepts.
Okay, so the intoxicant is left out?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that, I don't know what sources you came...
in the suttas.
Yeah, which suttas?
A lot of suttas.
Because when you are talking about the intoxicating part, the Buddha also mentions that if you start with that, the intoxicating, all the other 4 will follow.
Yes. My point is not about that. My point is about him asking about when the precepts. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a formal putting forward.
Yes.
These 4 of the first 4 of the precepts were already mentioned by Lord Buddha in all his teachings, without it being formally in the form of precepts.
Yes, and what you have to understand is for the first almost 20 years, there were no need for precepts. That's what I was trying to say to the gentleman.
But precepts, as we understand it, as formal.
Yes, yes.
These
But,
were already mentioned as not good.
yeah, because as a yogi, as a samana, in those days they're called samana, it's unthinkable for you to even consider stealing. So when a person was putting on the robes, when he was taking the going forth, already it meant that none of these things were going to be taking place. So they became officiated because the number of monks in the Sangha grew. So there had to be a system where they even had to meet for Uposhata, every fortnight, every 2 weeks, and chant the Patimokkha. So all these things were established because now it was being turned into some form of a structure, which didn't exist. Because you were dealing in the first 20 years or so with almost arahants. So an arahant is not going to break any precepts anyhow.
As a follow-up to this, I think that is so for India because the culture, the practice, the culture that went back thousands of years was such that they were so spiritually engaged that they knew about this. But for others, you see, when Buddhist teachings were later taught elsewhere, in those areas which are less spiritually awakened, in other places in the world, you see, then these precepts, as formal precepts, are important.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, especially when you're thinking about the third council, I was given until 10, but just to kind of tie it at the end, the third council was crucial with Venerable Mokkaliputta Tissa Thera when he officiated, when Emperor Ashoka saw how many monastics were not even monastics. So there were a lot of fraudulent characters, and of course precepts were not even being held. So he had been responsible for the killing of many monks. And when Venerable Mokkaliputta Tissa came in and he stopped it, and then he gave the option of those monks who were not holding up to the standard to leave this robe, and those who wanted to stay, they had to follow his system. And that system had to be followed to the letter. If they couldn't, they have to go. It's either one of those two. So I hope, because I have you and then just...
Question.
Yes.
For us to apply in practical life, but it's more of what I want to know. In your own practice, in your own development, because yours is a very interesting story, how you move from one to the other. I have limited time. I'm a very busy person. I have very limited time. No, I think so is so many people, they're lazy. How much time you allocate, like do you need to spend time studying a sutta? What I do day to day is just practice mindfulness. I lapse also, from time to time I lapse. Formally sitting down, I really try to make time, but frankly speaking, still trying. Only weekends I really have some time. So if you have to divide the time,
Yes.
the suttas is immense. I got some, I tried to read them. I could read here and there and I followed some sutta classes.
Yes.
If you have limited time, how did you manage?
Do you sit in your car? Driving? No, it's serious. Do you drive?
I drive.
Do you listen to anything in the radio?
Now I turn it off. I don't know.
How long is the drive?
Not too long because I only drive to the train station.
Okay. Do you have a phone or something that you can listen to?
Yes.
Okay. You can turn on YouTube channel, and there's many good Dhamma talks. And I know Bhante Punnaji's talks. I know a bunch of others. I have talks there.
I'm doing that already.
Yes.
I notice like sometimes I attend all these, my proficiency still has gaps. And I feel that because of my limited time, I couldn't give undivided attention on just this. I have so many parts of my life that I need to fulfill.
Yes.
So I still want to progress. And I know time is not much because I'm already some certain age or so we all have limited time. We don't
Of
have
course, I understand.
So I know the urgency, but I cannot, which one to prioritize? You know?
First of all, you're coming. No.
There's Pali, there's meditation.
No. You don't need to understand Pali. First of all, you don't need to be sitting for hours on end. Now, if you can go to a retreat once a year or twice a year, that's wonderful. At least that could get you to settle down and really get the feeling at the utmost of what you could give into this practice, because you're coming from a good place, and I can see it and sense it through your voice and your interest in pursuing this. However, you have to remember, breathe and relax, okay? And if you can, sit for about 30 minutes. If you get up early in the morning at 7 or 6, if you can, wake up at 5:30. What time do you wake up?
6:30.
6:30. Wake up at 6. Sit for 25 to 30 minutes, but go easy on yourself, please. I have talks on metta practice on my YouTube channel, and you will see actually lots of Q&A of meditators having these questions and what to do, how to do it. There's too much. Relax. Okay? And while you're in the car or on the train, listen to 1 or 2 Dhamma talks. And that's sometimes all you need to do for the time being. Otherwise, you're just planting a seed, and every 2 days are going as, okay, where is it? Come on, get up. It's like, you will do just fine. Just fine.
It sounds to me like you do have to read a fair bit of the Sutta text.
You don't have to. That's where we come in. We read it for you. And we explain it. And when the time comes for you,
Books, you know, it's scary.
it took me many years to gather the courage to dig into the Majjhima Nikaya. Many years. Okay, so you don't have to.
That's
But
not
it's-
even adding the Abhidhamma yet. So
You don't have to do the Abhidhamma. I tell people you don't have to.
Then she should renounce temporarily for 5 years. And don't get the time to study, then she will become.
If you have that luxury,
Yes.
wonderful. Okay, so,
last question.
yes.
In the meditation practice, in the deep practice, if you don't have a continuous guide, if you just self-practice all the way, can it go wrong in actually?
Yes, it can.
So in what instance we should know how to manage and start referring to a teacher?
If you're lucky enough to find a teacher from the start, however, that's not necessarily a mandatory thing, meaning you could start anywhere. When
At
the
what
student...
stage you need to know, it's a danger point if you're not sure how to manage it.
Are you an angry person?
I'm temperamental.
No, I'm not. This is like when you get to a point where you're realizing that you're getting angry, where the meditation that's supposed to make you more tranquil.
Right now, Right now, only feeling peace, and calm. I haven't feel that anger or what yet. I would like to see, but more of anxiety. I have anxiety.
That's fine. Ask everyone in this room. They will tell you 10 or 15 things. If you get them really quiet and heart-to-heart conversation, they will reveal to you so much.
More like worry and anxiety. That one come up a lot because
Yes.
the future.
Yes, these I see it all the time. Sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's restlessness.
Yeah, restlessness. Yeah.
Restlessness is going to be with you until you become an arahant. That's true. Venerable Mahamoggallana, he was a restless person. Okay? And the Buddha, he personally advised Venerable Mahamoggallana. And the only way that he could really get rid of it, because remember, it's the first fetters, restlessness falls in the other 5, which is the domain of an arahant. When you become an arahant, okay, as long as ignorance also goes with it as well. So what I'm trying to say is not to minimize what you are expressing, what you're experiencing. There are tools. I highly advise people to listen to the teachings of valid meditation teachers who do this.
Valid? Because there's so many teachers.
Yes, that's a good question, and that's where, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. There's that saying. So what you can do
There's
is...
too many teachers. There are also that. You have so many.
Actually, not very many.
No, not that.
I can speak with you briefly afterwards. If you like, I can briefly speak to you afterwards, and I can share with you some things. Perhaps that would be useful. Because it's past 10, so thank you for...